Hello, this is your boy, B Castle, live here with JD Goddamn Dillinger.
Howdy, howdy.
Welcome to the Wrong Side Right View podcast, episode 1 dash 1.
The inaugural podcast.
How's everybody doing? It's been a tough week, I guess, with the sad news. I don't know what news is sad, but, I'm sure someone got some bad news.
I mean, take your pick. Leave it up to anybody else. Everything is sad these days. So.
That droplet. Yeah, that circle in the ceiling. Was that always there?
I think it was.
Let me find out.
Condensation was never coming from it, though.
Yeah. Anyway, how's it going, everybody? Today we're going to be talking about rap music.
Oh, so many facets of rap music. So many facets. As much as I love it sometimes I hate it, but at the end of the day, ultimately, it is one of my favorite genres because it is the music of my people and many people. And it can speak to us on many levels, and it can also give us a migraine, but it's a very, very broad topic to speak about. One thing that we do need to appreciate, though, is rap music is an American-made art. This is part of our history, whether people like to admit it or not. And we need to give it that credence, even if it's not our cup of tea at the end of the day.
Sounds interesting. So you're saying that hip-hop, in all its facets, is an aspect of American culture overall, and it's an endearing part of African American culture.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So in what ways would you say that the influence of hip-hop have affected our culture in Grandstand?
Well, in Grandstand, you got to think about it. One great documentary to look at is the documentary Roll Kings, how it talks about the rise of hip-hop in New York in the 1970s and how it brought gang warfare off of the streets and it made people compete through battles in music. That's what brought about the arts of breakdancing and b-boys and competing, but out of respect, not out of violence anymore, unifying people, bringing them together in the inner cities, becoming one and sharing this love for this music that was not there before, giving those people a voice that they may not felt they had before,
Sounds like hip-hop was created as a way to help people communicate their feelings, right?
For sure.
And combat tribalism.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
So there's always an aspect in humans which is us versus them.
Sure. Absolutely.
So that thing, it's magnified,
Yeah.
in a city like New York, where
Absolutely.
every neighborhood, you might not like somebody, but if you know them more than the next person, you'll trust them.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So take could be have 1,000 people on each street.
Sure.
50 of them are kids. You know what I mean? You're a group, you're a squad.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying, not random numbers. You know what I mean? But so now you got to protect each other.
Absolutely.
In this big world. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So things get violent very quickly. When you have the amount of numbers going back and forth. So to mitigate things to the point where it becomes an expression of emotion that's non-violent.
Yes.
But can be felt by people in every borough, right?
Absolutely.
Let's say we're in the Bronx. If I make a rap song about life in the Bronx, it could be very different about life in Uptown Manhattan.
Absolutely.
Right? But the person listening to it should be able to understand where I'm coming from as an individual and an artist.
Absolutely.
Right? So I'm a person. We all have struggles, right?
Yes.
Through writing about those struggles, people can become connected.
Absolutely.
Right? We can come to understand things about each other that without that medium, there'd be a lot more friction amongst individuals, groups of people, regardless of ethnicity,
Absolutely.
regardless of origin,
Right.
nationality, and locale,
Right.
than there would be without it.
For sure.
So you're saying that the subculture that is this hip hop culture
Right.
has helped to bring people together
Absolutely. And
in the last 40, 50 years, right?
and yes, and then the impact it has, it's gone from national to international.
Oh,
Hip hop is now a worldwide thing. You know what I mean? Like I said, perfect example that I give to people. Look at London. One of the biggest music movements out of London right now isn't even EDM. It's grime music. London's very own spin on hip hop. And it's been around so long enough that they could safely say they have people that they consider legends in the grime hip hop scene. DWE, Wiley, Skepta, Wretch 32, Gigs, Professor Green, newcomers like Stormzy, legends like Kano, producers like Darky Freaker, and it has its own sound that mixes a lot of the early garage music of the 90s London scene with hip hop. And they've taken some cues from us for sure, but they've made it their own.
Did it mix with electronic music?
Some of it does. Yeah.
Is that what it is? Because I know Europe has a big techno.
Yes.
Their electronic music never left.
Yes.
Like we had a lot of techno in the 80s and 90s, and it kind of faded. But in Europe, it never did.
It never did. It kind of
EDM never left.
Yeah, it kind of stood the test of time, but it has a lot of those influences like dubstep, drum and bass, acid house, and then hip hop right on top of that. So, and that kind of culture is powerful because you have that voice that can reach out to people and teach them something, send them a message in which some other ways may have not been possible. And now hip hop isn't just hip hop. You have so many genres of hip hop.
Right.
You have psychedelic hip hop. You have alternative hip hop, which for the longest time was called backpack rap, which I found very disrespectful because it's just like, the term backpack rap came about in maybe the early 2000s early to mid 2000s when gangster rap and hardcore rap was kind of on a second resurgence.
Oh, it's coming back?
With like 50 Cent and G-Unit.
Well, because he wasn't part of the original squad.
Right.
He wasn't part of Snoop's gen.
Right.
Right?
He's
kind of a second gen gangster.
Yeah.
Right?
They grew up on it. They were influenced by it for sure.
But they weren't
They
weren't active
right
at the time that Ice Cube was really...
Correct.
You know
what I mean?
Where's Curtis Jackson from?
Queens.
Oh, he's from New York?
Queens.
I didn't know he's from New York.
Queens. Him and LL actually are from Queens.
Oh, they're both? But LL's a lot older than 50.
Yeah, a little bit older than 50. Yeah.
But they're not friends, are they?
I'm sure they have a mutual respect for one another. I mean, they're them, him, and Nas, because Nas is actually from Queens.
Oh, is he?
You know what I'm saying? There are very few people.
Oh, Nas is from Queens?
Yeah, Queens, Virgin, Queens.
Why. I thought he was from Brooklyn.
Yeah, but those are three people who really put Queens on the map.
Okay.
So even if they're not friends, coming from that era, they always have a respect for one another.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And hip hop is kind of like that healing, for like the inner cities. You know what I mean? That was our voice bringing us out of violence in the 70s and 80s. That was our voice in the 90s when Reaganomics happened and it put crack in every inner city in America.
So you're saying that President Ronald Reagan's policies, right, were subjugating black people?
Yes.
And specifically black communities?
Yes.
And that hip-hop music had a reaction to it?
Absolutely.
It was an expression of a reaction.
Right? That's how things like...
So there was no ignorance of what was happening. It was understood what was going on.
Right. And this is our way of fighting back.
So is there a history where... Because it seems like this, right? Let me bridge off a bit. The Republican Party freed black slaves.
Sure.
Right?
Right.
Abraham Lincoln was a Republican.
Right.
This was over 100 years ago, right?
Absolutely.
At one time, blacks used to vote Republican where they could. because just solely for that reason.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
If they could vote, they usually did. In the South, and I want to say southern part of the Midwest, Jim Crow was enacted, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of signs were just scratched out. If it said slave code, they just scratch out the slave and put Jim Crow. You know, like there wasn't much difference. It was like an administrative change.
Right.
But on paper they were different, but it's the same practice.
Right.
You know. So they have Jim Crow. Where was I going with this? Jim Crow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have Jim Crow. That lasted from 1860s. The Civil War happened, 1865? It ended, about. So the late 1860s, for about 100 years, about
right.
Jim Crow.
Mm-hmm.
Till apartheid in 69.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, so 100 years of Jim Crow and 300 years of slavery in America.
Give or take.
Well, so 400 altogether?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so there's 400 years of that. But anyway, so blacks voted Republican for about that so much time, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Democratic Party was extremely racist. Not that either one was less or more, right? I'm sure it was, most of them politicians were white anyway. So if they were racist, you know what I mean? It was more open at that time anyway.
Absolutely.
So the 1960s happened. All these, the riot, maybe not riots, but the marches, things like that. The activism was strong. And they got the right to vote. And the Democrats, the story I heard is the Democrats got mad that blacks got the right to vote. So they said that no matter what, if they're going to vote, they're going to vote for Democrats. And they started issuing the free stuff to help in their communities, And that's when they started the social programs for impoverished people.
Right.
People below the poverty line.
Right.
And I'm not sure if it was understood at that time, the negative effects that would have on black society, and that when you give people things, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm not against social programs.
Sure.
I'm against the limits set by them.
And
right?
And the long-term dependency created by them.
Right. Well, because it's like, why would I work? If I work too hard, I'll lose this, right? Even if you would have more, you would lose something. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And it's no one's fault, but that's just the reality of it. If you can't make more than $25,000 in a low income home, and you live in Long Island, you know what I mean? Which is way more above that for median salary.
Sure.
How are you going to live? I know we're getting off topic here, but so anyway, so it seems to me like Ronald Reagan wasn't popular among black culture.
No.
Like widespread.
Right.
And that he might have been a major driving force for that divide.
Sure.
This is the Democratic Party is 74% black.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, they're the largest, like, of demographics, they're the most Democratic. Between Jewish people, like, if you went through any partition,
right,
they'd be the most Democratic. So you're saying that might have a divide.
Sure. Absolutely.
That might be a cause in the rift.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's how things like Public Enemy came about and started speaking out. NWA. All of that was a reaction to what was going on in the inner cities in America. The police brutality, the violence, the LA riots, the Rodney King beatings. You know what I'm saying? Things like that. Stuff that's happening on a widespread national scale, and it seemed that it didn't matter because if you were dark skinned, it just seemed like it was just another day in the park. And we really didn't have much to fight back with except each other and the power of hip hop. You know what I mean? The
power of hip hop?
That power.
The influence of communication.
Yes. You
right?
know what I mean? That kind of stuff is what pulled us out of those dark periods, Well,
because the medium itself, it's not like let's take opera. it's difficult for people to understand it if you don't know the context. Like each piece is very different, right?
Yeah.
But if you take hip hop, it's almost like the entire thing is an exposition.
Right.
It's an explanation of something, a situation. You know, good hip hop.
Right.
It tells you a story. It conveys an idea. There's a purpose behind it.
Absolutely.
Not saying that if it doesn't, it's terrible.
Right.
But the best stuff tends to do that and do it well.
Absolutely.
While entertaining, because you're still being entertained.
Yes.
So that's art. So I'm listening to music, right? And I don't know. I've never lived in New York, but I can understand the things that you go through. You know what I mean? By listening to that music.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? When you're telling me a PB&J you eat 3 times a, you know what I mean? Like 3 times a day. You know what I mean? Like the way the rhymes go. You know what I mean? Is secondary to the content.
Absolutely.
So when you're listening to the content and it's stuff like, you know, your daily routine, by the time you leave the house, you go to the bus stop and you're aware of the dangers of the world around you and you're hungry the entire time. You know, you can feel those things. Like you're hungry the entire time. You have to go to school. You don't want to go to school because you look at everything else and you see how bad it is. You know what I mean? So it kind of like a joke.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're going to school, but your home life sucks. Not that it's anyone's fault. You know what I mean? You could put 100% effort sometimes and shit just hits the fan. I'm not, you know, it's not about any person's, you know, it's not what this is about.
Absolutely.
It's just about the reality of things.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So you go to school, you have this, so you're not doing well in school because it's secondary. It's not your goals to be there. It's not your motives to be there. I can understand that 100% because that's my life. It didn't take place in the city, but it took place in the, you know, the country in Florida.
Right.
But that's I can relate to that. Sure. I can't relate to a community aspect, you know, because I never lived in a place where I would say I'm Brandon from this place. So there's people that can say I'm this person from Brooklyn, you know. I'm not Brandon from anywhere. You know what? I don't have an identity. There's no aspect of my identity attached to my location.
Right.
I was born in Connecticut. I grew up in Florida. You know what I mean? So the whole time I was in Florida, I said I was from Connecticut. Then when I came back to Connecticut, I told everyone I was from Florida, so it kind of canceled it out because I wasn't either or. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, you know, I'm just saying. So there's something about that genre that makes it easy for people to connect.
Yes. Absolutely.
You know?
And with certain offshoots and things, like, for example, my favorite part, underground. That's like, when I went through a major depression in my life in my early 20s, that was like, underground hip-hop to me, I tell people to this day, saved my life. That was like the very blood that coursed through my veins when I couldn't reach out and talk to anybody. When the only conversations I had during the day were between me and God, because I felt like that was the only person that understood me at that point in time.
Right.
You know what I mean? But when I sought out, and when, it's funny because I'll never forget it, because I was going through it and I was just so fed up with a whole bunch of things in my life. My home life was shitty. Wasn't really getting along. I was butting heads with my parents because I was reaching that point in my life where I was trying to become a young adult, but I felt like they didn't really were ready for me to become a young adult. But I'm telling them, you got to do it eventually.
Right.
It's going to happen. You know what I mean? And I was just fed up with things and people, and just everything was just so artificial, and I was getting fed up with it, even down to the music.
Right.
So I was flipping through the channels one day, and I turned it on MTV Hits, and they always had a different music countdown that entire summer on Fridays.
Right.
This day it was
2009?
Something
the
like
hit
that.
list?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This countdown was underground hip hop. And I'm like, they've never done anything like this.
Probably haven't done it since.
Ever before. So I'm just like, all right, let me check this out. And the first song I heard was from Mad Villain. And it was a duo between another gentleman, I can't think of the artist's name right now, or producer, and the legendary MC MF Doom.
Mm-hmm.
And the name of the song is called Monkey Suit.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so blown away by the lyrical content, the such multi-layered content compressed in almost 2.5 minutes. And it seemed like MF Doom did it so effortlessly.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, that was amazing. And then Aesop Rock came on after that. That was the first time I've ever heard of Aesop Rock. I had no idea that song that just played, None Shall Pass, from the album None Shall Pass,
Mm-hmm.
that was like his third major album. I had
Mm-hmm.
no idea at that time. And I'm just like, by the end of the countdown, I was like, I knew in my head I had to make a change and I needed inspiration.
Mm.
I went through my computer on my BearShare account and deleted all the mainstream hip hop I had.
Oh, you did?
And I started completely from scratch, just with underground hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
Just with underground hip hop. I started with Aesop Rock,
Mm-hmm.
and I heard that song from None Shall Pass.
Yeah.
But I started with his very first album, which, believe it or not,
Mm-hmm.
it's like a gold mine to find like a hard copy of his very first EP.
Oh, really?
Music for Earthworms.
Yeah.
That's his very first EP that came out in 1997. He did that off of doing work as a busboy, living in New York, and recording that on an 8-track. That's how we made that first project.
Okay.
And I worked my way from there, and then I found out he signed to Def Jux. And Def Jux is kind of this underground label who pretty much spearheaded the indie rap movement of the late 90s to the early 2000s.
Right.
And I kind of feel when you talk to people about it, it's kind of like that period of hip hop that people either have forgotten or don't care to listen to because they feel it doesn't relate to them because it's not about the hood. It's not about being from the streets. It's not about being larger than life. And I'm like, I understand that, but this is very imperative that this moment in hip hop was here to pave the way for many, many, many artists. You know what I'm saying? And Aesop Rock, LP, Mr. Lift, Cage, ID and Abilities, Brother Ali, Slug and Murs, Tech Nine, which is one of the most successful musicians I've ever heard. Not just rapper. Tech Nine, the most successful musician / businessman I've ever heard. The very first underground artist to make 1 million records, to sell 1 million records on his own.
Wow.
With his own label.
Wow.
Like, that's insane when you think about that.
1 million?
1 million records as an underground rapper.
Wow. When was this, in the 90s?
He achieved this feat, I believe, in 2004.
Okay.
After the release of his album KOD.
So let me ask, this is a bit maybe ignorant, but
shoot,
when did underground hip hop become a thing?
Become a thing?
Yeah.
I mean,
why did it start?
You had flashes of it.
We'll start with why, and then we'll go to the how.
We had flashes of it in like the late 80s, early 90s with certain groups like Souls of Mischief, because they wanted to take a more conscious approach to hip hop. They wanted more of to send more of a message to people in hip hop. Another pivotal moment in that was the album Critical Beatdown by Ultramagnetic MCs. That was another one. And then when the gangster rap era started to come about, that's when things like A Tribe Called Quest started to come about. And they kind of crept from the underground into the mainstream scene because they just had such a smooth sound with such a syncretic lyrical connection between Phife Dawg and Q-Tip.
What was this group?
A Tribe Called Quest.
A Tribe Called Quest.
Yes.
And they came about, what, in the 80s? The 90s?
Late 80s, early 90s.
So hip-hop culture started in the 80s? Started in the 70s.
I'd say the late 70s, early 80s, yeah.
So underground hip-hop, it doesn't have a negative connotation to it.
No.
It's not like gangster rap, gutter life music. No, not that.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not dark in its content.
Right.
It's just underground in terms of not being mainstream.
Not being mainstream. Now, with the genre being broken open the way it is, now we have offshoots of underground which can be darker.
Oh, really?
You know, that can be gritty, that can be
So
gangster.
underground hip hop is its own genre,
Yes.
or it's its own type of. It's in its own market. So is it a different market?
A little bit of both. Well,
okay.
It's definitely both because it's definitely its own genre and in its own market, because you can have underground hip hop artists that are conscious now, like A$AP Rock, but you can also have underground hip hop artists that are very, very gritty, such as Danny Brown.
So who are your top 10 favorite underground artists?
My top 10 favorite underground artists. I feel like this list changes because the music, depending on what I'm feeling that week, but I say top 10, it would be A$AP Rock, Cage, in no particular order, except for maybe my top 3. A$AP Rock, Cage, Idea. This is such a crazy list. I'd have to say Brother Ali for sure. Danny Brown, absolutely. Bus Driver. Bus Driver is definitely up there.
I never heard of that. Bus Driver.
Well,
where are you at? You were
7.
A$AP Rock is your favorite.
I'd say all time.
Hands
down, without question, LP.
LP.
Without question.
Okay, so we're going by individual. Artists. All right, so LP. But A$AP Rock is up there.
Yeah, he's definitely.
Killer
Mike is up there. Danny Brown's definitely up there.
Danny Brown, Asher Roth.
Maybe
not too high.
Maybe not too high, but he's definitely on that list because Asher Roth will always get credit for me, for sure. Mickey Fax is another one. Mickey Fax.
Bus Driver.
Bus Driver. Believe it or not, Bus Driver. His father was a writer for one of the most pivotal movies in hip hop called Crush Groove. He was a writer for the movie Crush Groove, which really looked at the inside world of hip hop. And Bus Driver, along with a couple of other people, No Can Do, Open My Eagle, they created their own style of hip hop that they like to call art rap. Articulate, very intelligent, but gritty, in your face. You know what I mean? It was the best of both worlds. But I'd say top 5 for sure: Cage, Ace, Danny Brown, Ace, Idea. But like I said, LP would be my number one. My number one artist and my number one producer because he does both. To me, Fantastic Damage, his solo album Fantastic Damage that came out in 2002, is the most complete body of work, hip-hop wise, that I've ever heard.
Okay.
I don't think I've ever heard something in hip-hop perfect. To me, Fantastic Damage was the perfect hip-hop record.
The whole record? Not any track.
From front to back.
The entire record?
From front to back. By far. Like, the perfect hip-hop record. Like, that's an astonishing feat to me. Like, a perfect hip-hop record. And for you to be able to lyrically perform and production-wise perform on such a high level at the same time, with nowhere near a mainstream budget to back your music.
Okay.
To create such a work of art that is so imperative to the scope of where hip-hop is now, to me, that is what separates the good from the greats and the greats from the legends.
Oh, really?
In hip-hop.
Okay.
You know.
So who would you say is a legend?
Legends?
In hip-hop.
And I can easily say all of those underground people are legends. I can even say, people like Danny Brown are going to go down as legends.
Now, as it stands, they're a legend, or on their way to it?
On their way to being a legend.
How many? He has 4 albums, right?
Couple of mixtapes, 4 or 5 mixtapes, 3 major albums.
3.
Triple X, Old, and Atrocity Exhibition.
Okay.
Those are his
and
three
when was
albums.
the last one released?
2016, Atrocity Exhibition.
And he's still touring on that album?
He's not touring right now. He's actually working on his next album right now.
Oh, is he?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
An Atrocity Exhibition was my pick for album of the year in 2016.
Oh, really?
Even over A$AP Rock's The Impossible Kid.
Really?
Which was phenomenal.
Well, that's one of your favorite. You listened to that for maybe 6 months.
Yeah.
I think it was a solid 6 months. That's all you listened to.
Yeah. But then Atrocity Exhibition came out, and I'm just like, Kanye West may be able to take a thing or two from Danny Brown right now. Because as far as sitting on top of the throne, as far as alternative hip hop goes,
Kanye?
Yes.
You think Kanye's as good?
I'm saying Kanye can take a page or two out of Danny Brown's book.
You're saying the influence. If he took in the influence of Danny Brown?
Yes, because
he'd actually have some, substance.
He wouldn't have had these snags in the road with some of his albums like he has recently.
Well, you said you didn't like 808s and Heartbreak.
I didn't really like it that much, but I didn't hate it.
Oh, so just music.
You know what I mean? Just music.
There's a lot of experimental stuff on that.
Right.
Because it wasn't a hip-hop album.
Right.
Not really.
Not.
It was like a pop, hip-hop blend.
Correct. But as far as the experimental rap shit goes, Danny Brown holds it with an iron fist.
Well, it's based in logic, though.
Yeah.
It's not crap.
And it's
not that Kanye is.
Right.
I'm not saying he is.
No shade to Kanye, because Kanye is still a genius.
No, I listen to that album every day. For in 2009, I think I listened to it.
Yeah. Kanye's still a genius. You know what I mean? Because people forget college dropout, late registration, and graduation.
I never heard that album.
Those are three of the most important.
Is that the one with flashing lights?
Graduation's the one with flashing lights.
Okay.
Three of the most important albums in hip hop.
I heard that one.
Were those first three albums from Kanye.
Really?
By far.
See, I didn't start listening to Kanye until that song came out with Jamie Foxx.
Okay, go there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's when it really...
Right.
He blew up with that song.
Yeah, for sure.
He blew up with that song.
For sure.
It was just... You know how everyone has that hit that goes and spreads?
For sure.
I think it was 2005?
Yeah.
Maybe 2004?
Something like that.
Yeah, that song was everywhere.
Yeah.
That song was all over the place.
Yeah.
You turn on the radio, that song was playing. You change the station, it's playing.
Absolutely.
It's one of those songs. Almost like Usher in the early 2000s.
Right.
How Usher was always on the radio.
Yeah.
You change the station, it'd be yeah.
Yes.
And then it would switch and it'd be Let It Burn.
Right.
Then you'd switch and it'd be Lovers and Friends. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, stuff like that.
I get it. You know what I mean? But I mean, with certain things that he did recently, I just wasn't feeling. But Danny Brown, whenever he drops a project, he kind of disappears from social media. He kind of gets into a mode, and he just focuses on the music.
So let me ask. Now that you think about when you said gets into that mode, Jidenna has a process too.
Right.
Do you consider Jidenna an underground artist?
I would say a little bit of underground, a little bit of mainstream, because they know the world. Well, I guess you could say more on the underground side. I just heard his music playing in Foot Locker. Okay.
Which means he can't be too underground. If you hear his music, when you go to the mall and you hear someone's music, it's either a one-hit wonder or they made it. You know what I mean? So
sure.
It can't be too underground once you're listening to it while shopping for Adidas. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know what I mean.
No, I hear you.
You know what I mean?
I hear you.
It's not like I was in the basement of an underground sneaker market,
right?
And there was an underground record player playing underground music. You know, like a triple threat.
No, I hear you. I hear you.
You know, that backdoor sneaker boutique.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
Bunch of Koreans stitching up shoes. You know?
Yeah, no kidding. But no, I hear you. I guess you could consider Jidenna underground. Playing off of that, it's just like Danny Brown is very much an album artist. And with every project he puts out, he manages to keep that crazy but dark and beautiful experimental sound that he loves to fuck with so much. But he still manages to constantly reinvent himself and shapeshift himself, but still give his fan base that authentic Danny Brown flair. He's very much...
So, I heard this in producers say that the artist's sound.
Right.
That's the feeling they convey. when you hear their music.
Absolutely.
Because it's not like it's its own sound. It's really just like take Daft Punk.
Sure.
Right? That's not hip hop.
Right.
But you can hear The Weeknd's music, right? Sure. And they produced a lot of the songs on that record, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can hear that influence.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
You can feel the influence there.
And once you pick up on shit like that, you just know. Like when you can hear something dropping, you know it's Danny Brown.
So even like Kendrick Lamar.
Right.
You hear his music, you listen to the Black Panther soundtrack.
Right.
And you kind of feel it.
You do.
Kind of reminds me of the Spider-Man, the Amazing Spider-Man 2. Right. How we did the soundtrack for that. Mm-hmm. And all the music there was thematically similar. I actually like the soundtrack better than the movie.
Right.
Actually, you know what I mean?
Right.
Even listening to the movie, I like the soundtrack more than the film. Right. You know what I mean? But I'm just saying, you recognize that, like Deadmau5, for example.
Sure.
His music, you hear his intros, and you know exactly who it is.
Yeah.
Because interlude, it's not like I'm going to say, oh, Major Lazer. You know what I mean?
You're not
going to hear Deadmau5 and say Major Lazer. Not that Major Lazer's bad.
But most people nowadays don't even have the fucking attention span to appreciate a 10-minute piece from someone like Deadmau5.
Well,
you know what I mean?
It doesn't fit to the speed that the club would work. Depending on which club Depending
on which club you go to,
things move quickly.
You know what I mean?
In a club,
right?
Because that's just the pacing. Of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But I'm not really talking necessarily on the club end because I get what you mean.
You know what I mean?
I'm thinking. But I mean, like people who sit down and actually listen to music. You know what I mean? It's just like
a 9-minute song. Let's say it's not about 9.5 minutes.
It's very throwback though, because you got to think about.
It goes back to the old days where music was hours long.
Yeah,
you got to.
And you got to think about groups.
It's Beethoven's Symphony 5, but it's a specific piece of the Fifth Symphony. It's not the entire one.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's a specific chord in it that's you hear. You don't hear the entire 3-hour, performance every time you play the track.
Right.
But you would have if you were listening to music at that time. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So, I mean, when people pay to see a show, they want to see a show.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So, anyway, I'm just saying.
It's just one of those things that when you hear it, when you have those artists, you can hear it, and it's just like, damn, they're really about to go in. I could listen to a beat now, and if I hear a certain thing, like a distinct set of horns, or like a very, very very low fidelity style sound, I'm like, LP produced this.
Oh, you can hear it?
I can hear it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because I just know.
It's a feeling.
I know LP's flavor.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Does Killer Mike produce or no?
No.
He doesn't produce? So LP, if Run the Jewels does an album, who produced it?
LP.
But not Killer Mike?
No.
But Killer Mike would be on this stuff, but he wouldn't have produced anything?
Yeah, he's a rapper. He'd be a rapper. But LP's the rapper and the producer.
So there's a lot of people. I think it's a bigger talent when you can produce and rap.
Absolutely.
It's like a whole nother level.
Absolutely.
And I think those artists, not that Killer Mike is less talented than LP as a rapper.
Oh, God, no.
But it's a whole nother game. I met this kid. His name was Jonathan James. And he loved to produce hip-hop. Rap. And like underground and stuff. And he was a very soft-spoken guy. Black guy. The second he was performing and he got into it, it was like a whole nother persona. Not like it was based in a lie, but that performance personality, you know what I mean?
Right.
Was out. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of hip hop enthusiasts in Hartford. Right. So we were in Massachusetts, but he was from Hartford, So just to see someone's enthusiasm for the different aspects of the craft. You know what I mean?
Right.
He used to get up and say, I love music. I have 3 months worth of music on my playlist. It would take you 3 months to hear the entire thing,
Right.
But I love to produce it. I love producing. And I never really understood what that meant. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? When you're working all the angles.
Right.
there's a larger craft there than just being the performing artist.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So I just thought that'd be a nice story to share.
It's an amazing thing because, and then you can realize who's really talented because there was this web series that I recommend everybody to follow.
Okay.
On YouTube, it's called Rhythm Roulette, and they pick artists in hip hop, and they have had an incredible list of people on there: Barry Beach, John Wayne, the legendary Ninth Wonder, Skywalker, which is Danny Brown's like tour DJ and shit, part of the Bruiser Brigade.
Oh, really?
And LP was on there, and that's how I first got introduced to it. To where they'll take that artist, put them in a record store, blindfold them, have them pick out 3 records, bring it home, and make a beat out of the records they just picked. Completely blindfolded.
Really?
Have no idea what they just chose. And when I sat there and watched LP make a beat out of 3 records he didn't choose.
Well, he didn't know the records, but he knew what it sounded like.
No.
When he got it.
No.
So how did he make the beat?
Well, no, wait. He knew what it sounded like when he got home and like played it. You know what I'm saying?
So he picked 3 records randomly.
Never heard them before.
And produced a beat based off the content of the records.
Right. Took the samples from each of the 3 records that he wanted to use. Chopped them up. Mind you, he was doing it with a record player with a busted fucking needle.
Why?
Because it broke on him.
Oh, really? And it worked?
And he still managed to pull out this filthy fucking beat that was very much authentically LP.
Really?
And I'm just like, you gotta be shitting me.
Now, how could someone listen to that if they wanted to?
You know what I'm saying? Like I said, YouTube.com. Just type in Rhythm Roulette.
Okay.
Follow the channel, and they got a whole bunch of episodes on there.
Oh, okay.
And then
that sounds interesting.
And then you could just go from there.
So he won that challenge, huh?
And it's just one of those things to where it's just like not necessarily a challenge, but
it's a talent, you know?
Yeah, it definitely is a talent for someone to be able to do that.
I remember seeing the hip hop Evolution miniseries,
right,
on Netflix, and seeing how Grandmaster Flash built a lot of that tech stuff.
Sure.
The turntables, how he'd make it from scraps he found lying around, microwaves, whatever. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just stuff like that. Just the idea to think, when people say things like black people are lazy, black people are slow, like black people don't work, or, not intelligent, I couldn't conceive in a time like before the digital age, this is like when it was coming, creating tech like that. You know what I mean? Creating a turntable, from scratch without a blueprint. I could probably do it with a blueprint if I really needed to. Like if you had a gun to my head, I could probably say, give me a couple minutes,
Yeah, right.
But could you imagine just, how would you even know what to do? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
To play with the sound and the needle and the way the needle, you know what I mean? The needle tracks and the amount of talent in that.
Absolutely.
Is just, amazing.
Yeah.
The amount of talent in, just production in general. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just ridiculous.
Right.
You have to have a lot of balls to sit there and say, I'm going to do this, and it might not work. Because not everything you hear is stuff that, it's the stuff that works. I wonder how many beats come out, just like anything, that don't work.
Right.
That they have to play with. Because they're sitting there troubleshooting. You know what I mean?
For sure.
You're in the studio, you're experimenting, I heard something like 90% of lyrics written don't get on albums. Like out of all lyrics, 90% of them never make it to an album.
Right.
It's like 10% of all songs an artist makes actually get on them. They don't put things on there that's not to a certain standard. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So yeah, what are we at now? Hold on. All right, we're about 44 minutes. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up today. This is my friend over here, John Peel, a.k.a. ODSB, Old Dirty Sneaker Boutique.
Yeah, that's me.
The Man, that's a separate podcast though.
Yeah, that's me. Follow me on Instagram, fantastic__damage.
You heard him there.
Yeah.
Fantastic__
damage.
Okay. This is B Castle signing out on the Wrong Side Right View podcast.
Yes, it's been an honor to sit here with you guys and talk for our inaugural first podcast. I want to thank everyone who's listening. Any support will be much, much appreciated. That means the world to us. And even if it's one person, that's all we need for us to keep it going. And we're going to give a pledge to you guys. The content's going to get better. We're going to get guests on the show. Mm-hmm. We're going to keep giving you guys the best quality content about the shit that matters to us in our worlds and the worlds around you. So stick around. Stay tuned. We're not going to let you down. But until next time, guys, take care.